Can you hear me? Yes. Ah, wonderful. Important to establish that. A good second step, I found. The first one, establish distance. A funny thing to say, maybe if I'm trying to get something through to you. But sound needs a medium to travel through, does it not? And air works pretty well. Long as there is air, of course. But one gets a sensation, occasionally, that one is in a sort of vacuum. Hence, sound infamously goes precisely nowhere in that setting. Frankly, I still don't totally get how things get from my head to yours. Thought to electrical signal to bodily action to mechanical vibration, and then back up to the sequence reverse again, right? Supposedly. It can be hard to trust in such a process, especially since there were, in the first place, conditions under which one even came into knowledge of that process. Huh. Solus ipse, only the self. And so we get the word solipsism, and a shred of proof that there may be some least redeeming value in learning about how a tribe of self-inflated Italians babbled on in the blah 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 century before Common Era. But to get to my own shitty pseudo-etymology, I always hear the word slip in there. And I think it's because it's an easy thing to slip into. This solipsism. This idea that I'm all there is, all I've got, and there's just no getting out of it, yeah. I guess it used to bother me more than it does now, not being able to get a grasp on anything distinctly other than myself. Other is just an old English word for second, as in next to the first. I always kind of laugh imagining some sort of counting system. One, other, stop. Using the modern definition of other, like, okay, there's me. Then there's other stuff. I haven't the slightest idea what this other stuff could be, so I'm just going to stop counting there. A sort of leap of faith, isn't it? To assert this other. And I don't even know what it would mean. And I'm not one for leaping nor for faith. On the first count, I have bad ankles. And on the second, well, in my experience, faith has only ever been used as a cop-out word. A screen I use to poetically cover my ass when I come up short in my analysis and I could not be bothered to press my thinking any further. So I'm fucking tired of faith. And boy, oh boy, you have no idea how hard I have tried to definitively count past one without invoking any leaps. At first blush, considering the mathematical chasm between 1 and 2, it seems almost definitionally impossible. But I think I've gone and done it. Took me a good hearty while, sure enough. But I got it. I got a way to get past 1. Takes the form of a riddle, it does. 3 friends walk into a bar on New Year's Eve. One in red, the other in green, and the third in blue. Who makes it back out on the morning of New Year's Day? I'll give you a moment to think about it. Hotel.
I thought you said we were checking out a different pub.
Yes, are you quite sure this is the place?
Sure, of course. Firefly Hotel. It's the right one.
Wow. Clever name, huh? Let me guess. Their specialty beer will be called Whiskey on the Rocks. And the whiskey itself's gotta be ordered as a vodka neat.
And upon requesting a table, one might expect only a gin and tonic.
And if all you want's to see the fucking menu, you have to order an Irish coffee in perfect Gaelic while pointing your ass towards England. And
all right. Enough of that. How about we order something before trashing the service? However you may feel about the signboard in front.
all I'm saying is I don't see what was so wrong about spending another New Year's at the Pissing Well.
Speaking of clever names.
Hey, a name like that's exactly what keeps the acid street browsers out of our hair, even when it is the calendrically designated night to get blasted at any expense. Regulars are regulars, and I don't mind puke on my shoe so much if I knew the fool who blew it.
I would hardly go that far. Even so, this place doesn't look too crowded.
Right? Quite as tame as our usual hole. It's only 2 hours to midnight, and I'd say the place isn't even 1/4 full.
That's hardly.
Yes. Speak up just a touch.
Hardly a good sign, I would imagine. But then, does our friend prefer more patrons or fewer?
Backed into a bit of a corner, are we?
Point seated.
Which, I should think, makes it about time we get our rungs seated. Wonderful.
There's some spots open together at the bar.
Oh, lovely. Forget the booze. I'm hankering for some quality bartender banter. The words of genial conversation never ring so sincere as when they're spoken around a mouthful of your own delicates getting macked raw for a bigger tip.
Well, I guess we'll have to hope the stool cushions are plush enough for your sore ass.
Just a moment. How embarrassing. Could you fine young folk remind me of who you are?
Remind you?
I'm afraid we haven't met before.
Never been inside this place?
No.
Not even once?
Care for a definition of no?
You sure you aren't maybe a little addled? Too much Foss last time around?
How? What?
Really, none of us has been here before.
So you're new?
Now you're on the trail, detective.
But there are 3 of you.
Why, indeed there are.
Maybe we should just go?
Nah, let's give it a bit. What's the problem with 3?
Problem? I can't see one. Though this does make me a touch uneasy.
Then might I suggest a hasty exit from the service industry?
Well, so much for getting our delicates macked.
Point seated.
Might we ask why you're feeling uneasy?
Fuck it. We'll be fine. Look, it's just that there's usually a rhythm to New Year's Eve around here. There's always one new patron. Just one. Becomes a regular too, no fail. Fact is, that's everyone you'll see in here tonight. Poor honest folk who wandered in here some several years ago and wouldn't stop coming back each next year. Couldn't stop? I don't know, doubt there's much difference.
You must realize how suspicious that sounds.
Yeah, what sort of Kool-Aid do you got brewing back there?
That's what I'm asking.
That really doesn't clear anything up. Look, I really think we should leave. There's a foul feeling already to this place.
Christ, kid, it was just an expression. Look, everybody who comes in here does so willingly, orders their poison with full knowledge of its content, downs it on their own accord, and comes back the next year under no duress. It just always follows a pattern. I'm observing. I observe, that's my job.
Right, so who pours the drinks?
That would be me, the bartender. And before you ask, that's owner, manager, mascot, and janitor too. The whole show in one.
Sorry, but do you mean those aren't your jobs then?
Precisely. Not my jobs.
Because your job is to observe.
Yep.
I think observing must not pay too well if you're having to work all these side roles, shall we call them?
Oh, it doesn't pay a dime. But it's the most important part, I guess. Look, think of it as a family business. I stand back here and watch the patrons, talk with the patrons to keep my grandpappy resting easy down there.
Oh, so it's a family tradition of voyeurism, is it?
As I have been trying to say, I really think the
Hush, children. What is it that you observe then?
Huh? I'm sure you can guess. There's only one thing to see around here. How people handle their drink.
Well, no shit. But why not just ogle drunks from the back of some other poorly lit dive?
No, you misunderstand. I mean their drink, quite literally. Each one of these good and honest folks has, in this place, a drink very much their own.
You mean like a personal specialty? Drinks named after the loyal regulars?
Still, liquor's liquor, flavor it how you please, but what's there to see?
And mustn't it all be awful tough to keep track of, you know, being a bartender and all?
Correction, I am a bartender. It just isn't my job.
Right.
And to your questions, as per the Eve's tradition here, there's only one drink. It has only one name and it contains no liquor.
Some kind of pub.
Why care how patrons handle a drink that has no liquor?
The implications run dangerously close to drugging.
Hardly. Call a substance what you like, but I'm afraid your particular choice of verb implies some manner of malice or deception, no? And did I not tell you already? The patrons come and go, drink as they please, or don't. They know what's in this stuff. In fact, Foss, if you'll excuse the jargon, is the only reason this humble establishment has any clientele to speak of.
Foss being...
The name of my dearly departed grandfather. Also, the eponymous substance the old bat cooked up in a fit of delirium after regaining consciousness from some or other traumatic head injury. Last act in a rich, lifelong career of creative chemistry. Died the very next day, poor soul.
And people drink this substance?
Only the folk who find their way in here. It's a precious few. And someone's gonna watch. Thing about Foss is no two people take it the same way. All depends on their personality, basic character.
So I'd say the same about alcohol, no?
There's like 4 or 5 kinds of drunk, 6 tops. Look it up, I don't know. The whole point of Foss was to make some sort of worth of the cheap adage, in vino veritas, in wine, truth. I mean, sure, wine will loosen the tongue a bit, but just when you reach the point that the incipient drunkard might actually say something interesting, they fucking lose it. And all you're left with is nonsense garbled with vomit, inconvenient, and hardly reeks of veritas. If we could just eat away at the iron grip of hyper self-awareness without bumping the dials on memory, motor skills, cognition, then we'd be in business, no? Learn something right fascinating about a sorry soul or two. And so, Foss. Well, that was the theory at any rate. Fieldwork's a bitch, though.
Can I have my beer now?
I told you, there's only one drink tonight.
And it's not beer.
Nope.
There's little chance of us drinking this Foss of yours, you know.
And nobody will make you. If you would like a drink, you may very well order a drink. If you would like to leave, then you very well may leave.
In which case...
Hold on just a second. You can speak for yourself, but I have to say, it sounds interesting. I mean, we can go get our run-of-the-mill old drink any old day, right?
Yeah, and we can come back here to get our happy fairy miracle jism any old day, right?
This one doesn't listen much, it seems. New Year's Eve special, my friend. New Year's Eve only.
Well, pardon me then. I'll take 2 to wash down the cyanide pills I bought on special sale this morning. Damned if I'd miss that deal.
Oh, tell me how many corpses you see sitting here. People have been coming here for years and they seem quite alive to me.
We wouldn't see the dead here regardless, dipshit.
Whatever. Do what you like, but I don't see why I shouldn't have a drink, see how it feels, and if it doesn't sit right with me, then put the glass down and sleep it off in the morning. I don't think that sounds much unlike many of your evenings.
Most.
Indeed, New Year's or otherwise.
A moment, if I may. There's no sleeping it off.
Huh?
The body doesn't have a way to digest it or something. I don't know, I'm not a doctor. All I know is that the effects stick. That's why the mix only calls for a wee thimble of actual floss. The other shit's just to make it past the gag reflex.
So the stuff tastes bad too?
Like diseased donkey piss. Quite literally, mind you.
Thank you.
So what do you mix with that?
Some juices, spritzes, splashes of this and that. Doesn't go down too bad by what the patrons tell me. A little spicy.
Never tried it yourself?
Alas, I have not had the pleasure of tasting the mixture of my own device.
Well, no shit, the charlatan wouldn't try the product. How else would she...
On the contrary, my hasty red friend, I took myself a dose of straight Foss before I ever poured another soul a drop of the drink. And after that, I simply figured it was best to keep my count at 1. Scratched up the cocktail recipe by smell, more or less. Doubt what you will of me, but not my sniffer, mind that.
So you do know how it feels, this drink?
Only for myself, of course. The best word I could use would be sharpening, in a very high-level sense. It took a few days for things to really come into focus, and then I found myself quite convinced that Old Man Foss had cooked up something important, and that it was nothing less than, well, my job to see the thing through. Call it an obsession if you'd like, but there wasn't a hint of unease about it.
A sense of purpose, maybe? In a bottle, no less. Hardly seems like criminal merchandise to me.
Well enough, but okay, so the stuff gave you a sense of purpose, which seems a great result, so you decide to share it. Except that sense of purpose was originally none other than to share the stuff. So we go back from the top again?
One can't deny the aesthetic appeal of Ouroboros' slick serpent circle. But do you really have to go stuffing other people's tails into their own mouths?
And again, I do not. Please, I'm well enough cautious. Whatever I may have gotten out of the drink, I'm not such a dolt to imagine that everybody else will take the same. So I just make it available, and otherwise keep me out of it. No advertisement, no recommendation, no refusal of service to the patrons, no charge, no suggested donation. You want a drink? I pour you one. You want to sit there and choke on air? My guest, as always.
Unless, of course, there are 3 at once.
I told you, that's been put aside. I was thrown for a loop is all. When you take your hands off the dials and just observe, patterns emerge. Sometimes the pattern breaks and you get confused, but then you just adjust your theory. Patterns, not laws, my friend. And hell, sometimes when the dust settles, you find your pattern actually never really broke at all.
Have other patterns broken tonight?
Not that I see, but okay. If any of you leaves without having a drink, that'll be a first. If any one of you doesn't come back the next year and the year after and so on, that'll be a first. Oh, and if any one of you finds the mix to be much more than just barely palatable, that'll be a first too.
And you're sure you're not trying to pressure us?
Yeah, I seem to hear a bit of, well, don't break my precious record somewhere in there.
Of course you do. But I'm sure you'll agree that such a direct and ham-fisted suggestion would be the surest way to make someone like you not do something.
Well, now all you've done is reclass my disobedience as obedience to your model of my character.
Disobedience as obedience. Going round and round like that, you'll find cause for suspicion in any corner, won't you, my dear? What was the word? Ouroboros?
Point seated. Still, I ain't drinking the shit.
All right.
Well, you know what? I'm in the mood for unexpected. I'll take one.
Well, enough then.
Oh, 3 caught on the hook tonight, I see. That's a first. Is enough, barkeep?
I object to your choice of idiom. It is true that I have never had 3 new patrons visit on a single New Year's Eve.
And besides, only one of us was moved to order a drink.
Which? Are you a fool? Are you mad?
I like to think not.
Do you want to be?
No.
Then why in good sense would you sign up to gag down a tablespoon of neurotoxin?
Neurotoxin? Hardly. I'm just curious to test out a curious spirit, is all.
Is this lab rat so eager to dance for the white coats behind the bar?
Professor, I have repeatedly made it clear that this is not about some sort of
Oh, come off it. Yes, I know. I've heard it a dozen bloody times already. I tell you to save it for your mark, but it looks like you've already snared this one.
I'm not snared. I just don't see what's so catastrophically dangerous about the proposal. If you have some personal objection to how I fill my glass, then I'm perfectly amenable to hearing it.
Do what you want, kid. I'll admit this much. The barkeep isn't malicious, just reckless. Though I'd say you are too, if you won't hear at least one more account of what the stuff can do to a mind.
An offer about a biography, I'd say.
The pitch could use a touch less of salt and more of sugar.
Rich.
Forgive me, Professor, but I have to agree that your introduction could use some work. Honestly, I'm inclined to expect more polish after all these years. Couldn't you have had a script by now or something?
I'm a poet, not a playwright. And you're a barkeep, not a rhetorician.
Oh, just a barkeep, is it? Judging by your carrying on year after year, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's gathered that this kind-faced, unassuming, blithe, and winsome barkeep must in fact be the very devil himself, come with plots and scheming into your once blessed life to plunge you into the tragedy you were always destined.
Oh, Christ, plug it already, would you? I cannot bear to be made witness to your masturbation of the conscience. I said it already. I know you mean no ill, but you did say one thing well. Blithe. Blithe is what you are and will be until you shut this mess down.
A lighter charge. In any case, I'm sure you can understand why it might grow tiring to welcome the same guest into one's home year after year, only to watch that guest take a shit on the carpet and then insist that it was the host that loosened the guest's bowels in the first place.
Well, enough. Have your peace. Just allow me my smidge of bitterness.
Yes, I am quite accustomed. It's become clear to all of us that you can hardly help it, however much fuss may be a cause.
Might we know the subject of this?
Lover's quarrel?
The subject? Why, nothing other than a lover's quarrel, as it happens. With my actual lover, though, of course.
And you blame the barkeep for this? Well, this private matter of yours?
I can't help but say so. In part, I know the original fault lies with me since
It's a
the...
love triangle.
No.
It was a fair shot.
Just wanted to bottle up all the hot air blown about.
You do realize that explanation is precisely the task I'm embarking on.
Awfully slow about it.
Yes, Thank heavens we have you here to make sure there are no unnecessary delays in the unraveling of the story.
I suspect your heckler merely dislikes your style, linguistically.
Ironic that.
Is it now, Professor? Of what? English rhetoric, I'm sure.
Poetry composition, actually. But I take it that's all to the same end.
Fuck me.
Isn't it a touch early in the night for that?
Or perhaps the red one had a less carnal unease in mind.
I hate poets.
Well, now you're just being contrary.
Yes, and the ocean is full of water. Now can we please permit our good bard a moment to speak?
Yes, this bard. Shall I put out my eyes for a more Homeric effect of delivery?
I would have thought that a rather more Oedipal manner.
Ah, that's it! The professor's a mumfucker! All right.
Now then, Professor, your quarrel went about.
What a point to start on. I hate this fact because it rarely translates well. I suppose I should emphasize this at the outset, the subjective time of it. I perpetually feel as if it all happened just yesterday. One evening that a man I had been living with for several years severed all ties with me at a sharp and definite instant. Not a word has passed either way since then. The morning after the fact, I woke with not a sense of exiting, but of re-entering a nightmare. And the feelings never properly faded over the last 24 years.
Hold a moment. 24? Oh, look, breakups can be rough, sure. But if you still feel just as bad 24 years after the fact, I would think it might suggest that maybe something's a little misconfigured in your head.
If I'm not mistaken, that is the point of the story.
Indeed, with credit to our host. Now, as I was saying, the feelings never properly faded, so now it is all I can do merely to sit on it and try not to let it bite too deeply. At the time, however, I had space for what the feelings demanded, expression upon expression, and the only thing that let me release enough steam to dupe myself into feeling sane was my poetry. Ironic, is it not, that it all ended not because I loved him too little, but because I loved far, far too much, and could not withhold its outpouring.
You wrote too much poetry?
Essentially.
Well, how long had you been together?
Right, I mean, a couple little love verses can be cute and all, but if you dump 100 pages of the sappy shit on the poor
We've
guy
been
after...
living together for just over 4 years, romantically involved 3 years prior to that.
Ah.
But you're not totally off the mark. That is, quantity was the issue. But please, it didn't stop at 100 pages.
How much then?
Well, I alluded to Homer earlier, yes? If you recall, there are 2 epics to his name, each in 24 books. Lengthy bastards, not to mention the fact that they're versed through and through. I mimicked this length and format, only under the erotic rather than the epic muse. As I wrote on, my partner grew more and more hesitant to receive my gifts, but I only took this as humility. I pressed on because I could not recognize that my expressions of affection carried a weight of imposition proportionate to their size. At last, when my obvious frenzy had passed any furthest point of tolerability, he, for his own sake, and I now understand mine, ended our involvement. But from what I could see then, well, everything simply flipped on its head.
Ah, well, that's unpleasant, I guess.
And you mean to say Foss was involved in all this? To blame for it even?
Oh, come on, you gotta be kidding. You're gonna tell us what? That it made you so unbearably horny that you just had to go and douse the poor guy in your incontinent lagerie and then spend half a lifetime weeping?
Attention slipped again. Wherein with what single word did I mention carnal desire being the motivating factor?
Hold the tongue, Prof. I'm not finished. It's the same ragged run shit out of everyone, and your type especially. Coughing up stories and poetry and what other smoke and mirrors to cover up your ancient steaming animal bits when the blood starts pumping. Look down a second from your lofty worded cloud, and I'll bet you anything that The pressure that demanded expression wasn't between your ears or your ribs.
Well, if I might be so bold as to hope you're in the least way open to contemplating a counterexample, might I offer this? I first consumed Voss 3 years prior to the breakup for the sake of my writing, to make my typically subtle and variable moods sharper, longer lasting, more fit to ink and verse. It was only later consumption that soured the relationship and cemented me in my present emotional condition. I hardly see how any of this could be uniquely sexual.
Well, your feelings too. It doesn't change the fact that whether it's love or something else, your soggy poetry takes what's nothing more than self-serving, mawkish sentimentality and dresses it up in some guise of appreciation for something only nominally different from your own self-infatuated self.
If you always insist on interpreting things to fit that
No,
frame,
it's not always. It is precisely because I maintain that people are capable of genuinely other-centered emotion that I detest when mentally infantile wads of incontinent appetite such as this try to cast their hungry lashings out as the throes of love, and that at that so glibly as to nearly convince their tranquilized readers that any crime is permissible so long as it comes from a sincere heart. Look, you claim all this garish verse was born out of love or affection or whatever, but you yourself admitted that these expressions carry their own imposition, even if you didn't at the time notice it. This failure to notice, is that not a lack of consideration? And so a failure of love? Christ, if you never take a look at the ground, you'll have a hard time dodging pitfalls, sure. But then you're just a fool, and a dangerous fool at that, for not glancing at your feet now and then. Put your pen down and go wank in a cave where none of us have to watch.
Well then, pardon my intrusion, but I seem to recall that our good professor had introduced this matter for a reason other than providing the fodder for the limp moral tirades of my evidently agitated friend.
it was a warning.
Right.
Yes, stay away from this place and its drink.
Really, you're more than welcome to stay, even if you prefer to keep your glass empty. I do enjoy the company.
I can't say I get this whole warning thing. I mean, you weren't caught by surprise. You knew what the shit did well enough, and you asked for it. You wanted bigger, flashier emotions, no? So if you come in self-inducing mood swings for the sake of exhilaration, then you've simply gotten what you've asked for if your psychological car runs itself into a brick wall.
Leaning a touch harder into the accelerator hardly constitutes a request for a likely fatal collision.
And is a bit of speed for speed's sake such a hateful thing?
If that's the only reason you're behind the wheel, then you ought to have never been given the bloody license to begin with.
Well then, officer, what loftier goal would you have us steer toward?
I'm not your fucking life coach. But what I can say is that the emotions are the motivators, not the ends. So I have no pity for someone who whines, I want bigger fillies because these ones aren't enough.
Well then, you'll be pleased to know that these bigger feelings were designed for the end of writing more effective poetry.
Then write me a sad song. A whole book of them, why don't you? Really, has your misery, apparently worth 24 years of wallowing, not been enough to inspire a couple new rhymes?
I will say I have remained remarkably productive in that sphere, if it may serve at all to ameliorate the rest. But in the end, misery is misery, definitionally unpleasant.
But I don't know if people are really that simple. I mean, isn't some part of you glad to have a story at all? A sense of feeling worth writing from? I don't want to sound callous, but I think even a sense of tragic significance to one's life is better than no sense of significance at all.
I can't say I'd be surprised to hear the prof secretly enjoys all the moping about.
Look, maybe we can gauge it. Try to tell us, Professor. Would you rather that none of this had ever happened?
The alternative being?
Continuing on as you were before encountering Firefly Hotel or Foss. What was it like before? What were you like?
It's a bit hard to recall, in the full subjective sense, but I think it was dull, a notch or two above mediocre. But like I said, everything I felt was subdued. I won't go so far as to say I like it this way, but I will admit there is something good in having escaped that old emotional bareness.
I do have to say, I don't fully understand the conundrum. I find little objectionable in feeling like a lead weight most days. Makes things simple.
Simple, but boring. I don't know. It always seemed to me that numb was just a couple paces away from dead. And besides, it's not like we're talking about pure, unadulterated pain here. There's a sort of nuance to this dejection. Something not altogether bad. Right, Professor?
Ah, you have a point, I will grant. Better to be Hamlet than Rosencrantz, to put it one way. After all, they both die in the end.
You are sick. Both of you. Buried in perverted fascination with your own capacity for emotional volume. Just narcissists in rags.
Sorry, friend, but I can't let myself be restrained by your simplicity. Besides, you spent the last 10 minutes obviously getting off on this moral outrage of yours, so who are you to talk about emotional perversion? Well then, I suppose that settles that. Barkeep, a drink, if you will.
As you please.
Well, go your way. I, for my part, thank the gods will be leaving soon.
I am pessimistically hesitant to assume that will be the case.
Here you are.
Thank you kindly.
Well, feeling dumber yet?
Nothing about this is instantaneous.
Ah, too bad. Well, bye then. Maybe we'll see you next year if my buddy decides to resign any further portion of will to the beautiful chaos of emotional turmoil.
The doctor would object that no such thing ever existed to be resigned.
Good evening to the doctor. This is rather later than the doctor's usual arrival, is it not?
The doctor's been present for upwards of 90 minutes. The doctor was simply awaiting an appropriate time for conversational entry.
This doctor being...
You? Heyo, woohoo. You the doctor, pal?
I doubt the doctor is likely to respond to such a manner of address.
Nor would be I, meeting with such a rough tongue. How do you do? You're the doctor, I take it? Would you care to tell us about your trade?
Well, ain't this just adorable?
Entertaining at the least. There's gratification in watching you be so slow. I doubt the doctor will pick up on the humor, though.
The doctor would remind that, though free of the emotional experience of mirth, the doctor is fully capable of recognizing causes and expressions of the sensation in various individuals.
Oh, so does the doctor then not have any capacity for laughter?
The doctor suffers no physical debility preventing the muscular activity of laughter. However, the doctor lacks the immediate perception of humor requisite for natural activation of the response. The doctor can attempt an unconvincing imitation of the phenomenon. Ha ha! Though this seems not to be what is asked for.
Sorry, but if you can tell why someone like the barkeep would laugh at something, then why can't you laugh at things yourself?
No second person.
Christ. Look, we would like the doctor to elaborate on how the doctor can understand the causes of laughter, but never actually laugh.
The doctor does not recognize a contradiction between the attributes of understanding and non-expression. Mirth itself is purely sensational, not rational. One might consider the case of a blind patient who is easily taught the theory of color and the correct and consistent assignations of color adjectives to objects, all while having no internal visual experience of color.
And explaining a joke can just kill it, you know?
One might in fact say that mirth exists precisely in spite of reason, not because of it.
The doctor cautions against a simplistic, if aesthetically appealing, generalization.
Well, I'm at least glad to see one other person here can cut through the prof's poetic bullshit. Oh, what a beautiful paradox. Such a sexy subversion of the conventional conceptual alignment. Kiss my ass, buy my book, and give me tenure.
The doctor does not associate the professor's foregoing conceptual error with the professor's own literary occupation. Only this was meant to be said. It is easily known that developed reasoning can contribute and contribute greatly to the perception of humor, as evidenced by the intimate linkage between language and humor.
So the poet is the wisest of creatures.
The doctor presents no verdict in this direction either.
We hope that the doctor can pardon the rampant personal investment in the subject.
Yes, besides the professor's service of ego, one suspects that the red-clad may have suffered some past injury by another's poetic misuse of language. The doctor advises cleaving more judiciously between the figurative and literal language of others, to spare oneself the inconveniences of misunderstanding.
If, hypothetically, I were to label the doctor as a starched and snobbish prick, would I risk any inconvenience of misunderstanding?
No.
Well, would the doctor care to give the doctor an introduction of sorts? I regret the doctor being so quickly subjected to my friend's vitriol.
Set's objection was in no way unexpected, the doctor having observed, at a distance, all of the previous conversation. In regards introduction, the doctor is a practicing psychiatrist with a specialization in sleep medicine. The doctor has been a patron of the Firefly Hotel for 13 years, over which time the doctor has consumed a total of 17 doses of FOS. Attributable results consist primarily of depleted emotional effect and concept of self.
17? Is that a lot?
By mere count and relative to other patrons, yes. But keep in mind, even the strength of the compound is subject to change according to individual peculiarities.
Well, I mean, the emotional dulling effect is obvious enough, but how can the doctor be describing the doctor without a concept of self?
We're creeping back into bullshit territory.
The phenomenon is simple, if perhaps unfamiliar. Necessarily, the doctor perceives the doctor only after a delay in time, which is to say, as memory. This is standard. The doctor differs from psychological normality only in that the doctor has no concept of a present observer, which might identify with said memories. There is simply a chain of immediately accessible residual sense impressions, termed memories, which might all be understood as the former perceptions of a single individual Homo sapiens. The sense of identity marking this particular Homo sapiens as designated and thus distinct from all others is indeed mere sensation, as was suggested regarding mirth. One either has this sensation or does not. An overwhelming majority of humans do, the doctor does not.
As a descriptive model, the doctor's account holds no small merit. At least it saves the bother of objectively trying to define what the self is.
You'll save yourself the bother and the additional nuisance of utility to boot. Tell me all you like that the I doesn't exist. It still doesn't get the thing out of my head, and it still doesn't help me to decide, say, when to finally call it a night and drag my buddies out of here by the collars and over to a marginally less deranged drinking establishment.
The doctor has not been inconvenienced by losing this sense of identity. As a matter of fact, the doctor is attaining considerable repute as an effective psychiatric caregiver is often attributed to the doctor's own purely materialistic theory of mind, put to practice all the clearer without the usual egotistic illusion.
Is this why the doctor chose to consume so much FOS? As much as it might have furthered the doctor's career, cutting out emotional life entirely seems pretty drastic a price to pay.
Although, if you do avoid all emotion, you also avoid wanting to be otherwise. If one does not desire, one cannot desire to desire, I would say.
The blue-clad one speaks accurately. The green-clad is not wholly mistaken in supposing the doctor was motivated by career interest. One must keep in mind, however, that at the time of first patronizing this establishment, the doctor was in possession of comparatively normal emotional capabilities.
And these were relevant to the doctor's consuming thoughts?
To a considerable extent. The primary emotional phenomenon in effect was that most often described by the word guilt.
You can spare the word count.
It's a bit late to be judging this one's prose, I'm afraid.
At the relevant time, the doctor functioned as advisor to several doctoral students in psychology. One of them, the most gifted and motivated by several degrees, was the individual who informed the doctor of the Firefly Hotel's existence.
Was there always a "the" in the name?
No, speech idiosyncrasy. Move past it.
In the subsequent year, the doctor accompanied said student to this establishment and sampled FOSS. The student expressed great curiosity in the compound's effects and determined to consume considerably greater than usual quantities of the substance at each visit over the next several years. The doctor encouraged this as an opportunity to record observations of an otherwise unknown psychoactive substance.
Ah, so that's where this is going.
Over time, presumably under the influence of FOSS, the student's natural fascination with the study of human minds took a distinctly philosophical turn. In particular, she developed a fixation on the limits of sensory perception and thus human knowledge of the world. After consuming more doses of FOSS under the doctor's supervision, student's behavior grew distinctly erratic. She was prone to derail otherwise scientific discussions with semi-incoherent ramblings, hinging on the symbol of cranium as cage. The full extent of her disturbance, however, was not made clear to anybody until late November of the fourth year, when both her and her roommate were found dead in their residence.
Wait, what?
Both were found dead in their residence of deliberately inflicted head injuries. Copious journals maintained by the student and uncovered during later investigation revealed a particular obsession with the unusual, though not wholly original, idea that the pituitary gland was the seat of all consciousness. In response to her own philosophical distress, which she assumed to be shared by humanity in general, she devised the solution of removing said gland from the cranium entirely, ultimately performing a makeshift, obviously failed, operation on her forcibly sedated roommate.
Question. Using what though?
Given the rudimentary nature of the tools available, the doctor understands that further elaboration on the matter would call to mind images sufficiently gruesome so as to cause marked emotional distress to those present and listening.
Thanks, I guess.
Very shortly after her failure, the student apparently attempted the same operation on herself, managing to inflict soon fatal wounds before losing consciousness.
And thus the guilt.
Yes, the doctor's sense of complicity in the matter, while not resulting in any formal criminal charges, spurred the doctor towards two courses of action: to chemically silence the sensation of guilt, and to imitate as penitence the actions of the aforementioned student. Given the doctor's internal observation of depleted emotional effect after initial consumption of FOSS, the doctor concluded that both urges could be answered singly by further consumption of said substance, which the doctor continued until attaining present psychological condition.
Well, that sounds pretty awful, to put it one way.
What it sounds like is just so much more horseshit. The professor's whole damn point was that the stuff sent the feelings wide swinging haywire, and now we're meant to believe that if the doc had the drink just nuked him?
I seem to recall that our host had Adam branded at outset a broader explanation than the unidirectional dial turning of emotions.
Roughly. I'll try to phrase it again. It seems that what it does is that it slackens the will, conscious effort, pretense, exertion, whatever the sort. Lets people fall under their own natural gravity back to some personal center. So we could say that Prof was a naturally emotional sort who took steps to keep it in check. And Doc was a naturally impassive sort who took steps to give the appearance of natural emotion.
Slackens the will, might be a cute pity summary, but Dr. Mechachem Electromind here is hardly likely to agree that there are any willful parts of the mind at all.
The red-clad one exhibits a passable understanding of the doctor's position.
Rare and precious moments.
Stuff it, Peanut. Look, I'm asking the doc. Make sense of this boss business without resorting to the concept of volition.
The doctor maintains that this phenomenon of will or volition, of whose existence and meaningfulness the red cloud is deeply persuaded, is only one another sensational phenomenon. It can be extinguished much like the eyes can be put out. This, according to the BARKEEP's theory, which the doctor also favors, is the essential effect of FOSS.
One can see the appeal. I mean, an illusion's an illusion. And one's better off dispelling such, no?
Oh, come on. Better off implies a standard of value. And how the hell do you have that if you nuke the consciousness or emotion or whatever the hell else forms the basis for people's ethics, shitty or otherwise?
Oh, now the champion of human emotion.
No, little piss baby. Just not an unabashed worshiper like some people. Rather, I don't think it can all be eliminated. And the attempt to chemically silence the internal call to action rather than just fucking answering it is just a deluded waste of time.
But in this regard, if a solution feels like it has worked, then it has worked, I would say. If one no longer senses a self, nor a motivation for action, nor a capacity to act, then they effectively do not exist, being, after all, sensations by the theory.
Ugh. Well, now we're just getting nowhere. I can't very well tell you whether these sensations are actually absent from the doctor's mind.
They are.
Or whether the doctor only stubbornly asserts such because the sicko gets off on playing robot sociopath Brick Wolverbrain.
The doctor suspects a reemergence of the red cloud's personal bias.
Well, the doctor can go narrate the doctor eating a steaming fistful of the doctor's own reemerged shit fresh from the doctor's own personally biased asshole for all this red-clad cares. Look, pal, if you think trying, and I must assert failing, to kill off your emotional perception sounds like a super cool way to solve all the problems in your life, then go right ahead. I will try to enjoy the rest of my days dragging a manic puppy and a catatonic sea urchin in my wake.
Whoever said I was wanting to partake of the spirit in question?
No one had to, because if I had a third of the brain cells that I do, I could have told you where this is going. Coming from your coy ass, one could see the appeal amounts to, Jesus H. Christ, that's the most toe-curlingly fine idea that's ever tickled my wee waxy ear canals.
Quite unnecessarily rude, but yes, I must admit I don't share a friend's enthusiasm for emotional vivacity, having in me little other than minor amplitude modulations of such disgust as is aroused in me by your miserable attempts to sound clever.
Oh, come on. I know you've got some positive emotions lying around in there. Don't you want to keep those at least?
Presumably, I have some slight non-zero capacity for that sort of cheerfulness, but if I should choose to silence a day's worth of mild joviality to spare myself a month's worth of low-simmering, pervasive disgust with the world around me and the people in it, then I don't see what business of yours it is.
I'm just saying, I drank because I thought it'd do me good. And it doesn't seem like you'd be doing yourself any good with this. So, for your own sake.
Your consideration is appreciated. However, regarding what is good in this arena, I must risk accusations of arrogance in declaring myself to be the foremost expert on my own internal psychology, who must therefore cordially refuse your advice. In general, I would encourage you not to waste your breath prescribing other people what is distinctly your medication. That is the purview of individuals who have no confidence in their own solutions, who require endless corroboration in the form of other lives, in the form of patients whose well-being is valued at nothing so long as it means one more mouth swallowing the same pill ridden with insecurity, one more tally to bolster your theory whose only hope of aping legitimacy lies not in accuracy, not in efficacy, but in popularity.
All right then, do what you like.
Indeed, I shall. Barkeep, a drink, if you will.
As you please. What? All out of witty punchlines?
I just want to get the fuck out of here. You and your psychotic patrons have already managed to stuff this poison down the throats of my two best friends, so I think I'll just go find myself a drop or two of ale to close out the year before I have to wake up and deal with the mess that you inevitably will have proved to have
In
caused.
the beginning, the deity.
Sweet mother of God, get me out of this place.
Really, you're overblowing it. I don't mind another companion. Besides, this one looks entertaining.
I'm not getting naked for you, bucko, so don't even ask.
How lovely, another innuendo junkie.
Finest of evenings to you, Reverend.
Reverend?
Of what, if we might ask?
Of your mom's deflated titties.
Huh. No, there's a religion I can
Stop.
get.
No, but really, you never have heard of it, so what's the matter anyway?
Heard of?
My sect, you lick, slick, pick, flicker.
One must at least admire the lyricism.
I praise, Reverend.
I'll be sure to include it on my tax returns.
Might we ask what?
Ah, blah, blah, shut up. I don't do spiels.
What? No sob story? No moral punchline? Barkeep, buddy, you're slipping. What happened to our rounds of flesh and bone fables?
Weren't you just wanting to leave?
Truth be told, I'm a touch tickled. This one actually seems all right.
Oh, yeah, new friend.
Is this all the effect of FOSS, should we assume?
One can hardly tell these days. On top of past FOSS intake and a prodigious intake of well beyond 40 doses at that, the Reverend also enjoys a hearty portion of conventional booze on the eve of each new year.
Oh, hell yeah, new friend.
No sight so sweet as first flowers of romance.
Confess I'm touched. In
Touched.
strictly
Like
emotional sense, mind you.
Whatever. Reverend, you were starting to say something when you came in, no?
I know I was, but what were you were,
I believe you led with, in the beginning, the deity.
In the beginning, the deity said, I'm fucking bored, because deity was all by itself, except there was a big lump of mud kind of just sitting there next to deity. So deity said, I just make funny shapes in the mud. And so it was. And deity made funny shapes in the mud.
Like mud angels?
And
or-
the shapes in the mud were actually kind of cute. I mean, there were puppies and kittens and lungworms and giraffes and dolphins and cockroaches and botflies and swans and doves. Well, they were boring as fuck because they just did mud stuff, and deity already knew about mud stuff. This is boring. So deity made some extra kooky mud shapes, and they did some pretty kooky stuff. This was pretty entertaining, and for a longish time, deity forgot its lonely lonesomeness.
But then,
But then deity noticed something so very awfully tuna, salmon, grouper, trout, herring, flounder, fishy. The kooky mud shapes had started to do a kooky little dance. And deity said, shucks, that dance does look awfully darn familiar. It reminds me of how I dance when I'm out strolling through the great purplish black void of ultimate no. Indeed, it was the dance that deity danced when it went out strolling through the great purplish black void of ultimate no. And the dance raised into the air a great stinky stink. And deity said unto itself, my, this is the self-same reek as rises from my own myriad bungholes when I do make a passing of a solid or gaseous nature. How I detest this wretched resemblance. And while deity grumbled and bumbled and stumbled to itself, it ever so mistakenly allowed one slight disturb of its sweet and sumptuous thousand-cheeked deific grump to pass through the azure skies of the mud world, and it was perceived by the kooky mud shapes. And at that moment, the kooky mud shapes saw the primordial ass whence they came and realized that they had been duped, that they were nothing but mud indeed. They were nothing of their own. Oh, this was impermissible. And so the kooky mud shapes blew themselves and all the rest of the mud world straight to hell. And the sparkling myriad deific eyes were at last forced upon the truth. That the sweet and kooky mud shapes were and had always been nothing but the glorified issue of deity's own myriad bungholes. And indeed, what is one's poo-poo but one's own clotted, calcified self? Verily, verily, I say unto thee that deity was never not alone. And it only ever played in the stinky poo-poo that it poo-pooed ere time began.
Huh.
And so, deity said to itself, ah, shucks. I went to find a new way to be not bored. And so deity took a great and mighty hand and swept up a great and mighty forest of its own myriad cocks and stuffed them into the great and mighty pitfield of its own myriad cunts. And deity did then writhe about for many eternities in self-stimulation till it again should grow bored. And by then, might hope to have put forth yet one more great and stinky poo-poo with which to fashion its art.
I take it that was a sermon, good reverend?
Aye, and nay, and may all the pieces be with you, sweet child of mine. For are not we all deity? Are not we all the self-same cock writhing in the self-same cunt, wishing only and ever for new and unknown vistas to come upon? Does each soul not seek something other than its own self-same self?
That much seems true.
I would be more hesitant to align myself with this, well, this mad sort of talk.
Right. Call me crazy because you can't follow the thread.
The doctor would interject that though the Reverend is presently inebriated, the Reverend's sober assertions, to judge from past experiences, show an equally clear pattern of certifiable insanity.
See, so perhaps we should do something to help the poor soul rather than providing a pulpit for deranged speech.
I need not of your limp pity, for I have been to the trough of the valley, and mine eyes have looked upon the face of the worm.
Ignore these people, Rev. I get what you're after. This business of being trapped in oneself, with oneself, as oneself, whichever it is. I get it. It's the same shit that the doctor's student got so riled up about. It's the same shit that the prof's melodramatic ass went and took a deep dive into, if you ask me.
Which nobody did.
And they didn't need to. So, Rev, I just wanted to know if you have an answer. What route of escape would you suggest for your sermon's cosmic shit sculptor?
There is no escape, for the soul is the prison of the soul, which in turn imprisons the soul in a prison fashioned of the self-same soul. Troubled child, if you ever so much as grasp the question, then there can't be an answer. The walls are there for all who care to look, and even some who do not. The beast that lusts after its self-same flesh lurks behind every pair of open eyes. Shut the lids and pray for sweeter dreams, but for all that is good, beware lest ye burn away those gossamer curtains with the acid served here.
Acid? Come on, that seems a bit...
Shh. Do not wake yourself. Swallow your medicine soft.
Reverend, here, listen. If there is no solution, then what the hell are you whining about? Come on. Somewhere you must, at the very least, assert that it's possible to step outside of the self.
Possible? Granted. But ever done? Ever to be done? I mean, far be it from me to think so highly of mud shapes when deity itself cannot meet the task. One thing at least I can say, drink not of the water that washes scales from eyes.
That still makes no sense. If the situation is hopeless, how can it be made worse? Please, quit the lamentation and at least offer one attempt at a concrete solution. Hell, even just an outline would be fine.
I drank. I drank in faith that a clearer eye would be at last able to turn away from the mirror. Alas, that sweet eye core showed mine eyes the face of the worm. And so I knew that the prison lay true in my heart, and all the gods of the world were only ever sick refuge for the misanthrope.
Oh, spare me more excuses. You know, I've met lots of your sort before. Marvelous at stating the problem. But at finding an answer? No, your sort is quite content with the mine eyes have seen and no further. Is that all enough for you? Are you happy with that? Oh, and the more truth you swallow, the bigger your own throbbing ego. And the more you can convince yourself of despair, the less your guilt at turning not one of 10 fingers to the task.
And drink, child, and see how much resolve of yours remains. See if you do not fall even further down the well that drills into your own bowels.
All right, I will. I'll drink, and I'll show you that it has nothing to do with me and mine. I'll drink, and hell, these fools already drank. And we'll still be back 1 year and the next, and we'll together show you 3 heads that aren't rammed up their own rumps. We'll show you that there are 100 kinds of flowers beyond the vulgar, tired narcissus.
All right, buddy, you don't have to force anything
No.
if you don't.
Fuck this place and its rotting theorists and physicians and every other sort more concerned with the why than the how. And especially fuck this spiritual charlatan.
Truly, I don't think the Reverend is liable to so much as understand what you're trying to put on here. I'm not entirely convinced that I do.
I'm old enough to know by sight the hopes and rages and self-flagellations of a child.
Barkeep, a drink.
As you please. Oh. Oops. Oof. Well. Shame of an ending, isn't it? Or no ending at all, really. It'd be pointless. There's just no pleasing your sort. I mean, I flub up one syllable in the last minute and it'll all go. Trust me, I've seen it. I've seen people sit through 300 hours of television in absolute rapture and then curse the writers and actors and set builders all to hell just because the final episode was subpar. I've seen people burn books for the sake of a sour last page alone. I mean, come on. Sure as hell not going to put that target on my back. In all seriousness, though, I'm doing you a favor. Huh? You ask? Well, as I've always said, endings are for fools and liars. At least the narrative ones are. The pretty ones, the tyings up of loose ends. I mean, come on. I knew a lady who had a fatal stroke in the middle of her turkey sandwich, and a right tasty sandwich to boot. What kind of an ending is that? One of her old friends was real upset. They'd had some sort of big fight in months past, and they hadn't spoken in a while. Figured it'd all blow over, and then this goes and happens. No makeups, no bye-byes. Shame, shame. History's a real shit of an author, gotta say. So when I sit down to spin a yarn, I've really just got no choice but to hack it off at some point. That's just being true to life. Or, more really, true to death. Because that's the big end everyone gets into a fuss about, isn't it? Death. I don't think there is a single other thing you'll find surrounded by more talk and theorizing, welling up out of less actual understanding. The quintessential example of what I like to call my first bullshit theorem. Chatter about an idea is profuse inversely as that idea is well grasped. For my part, I'll say it straight. I haven't got the least fucking clue what death is. I don't even know what it would mean to die, to unexist. So I just don't assert any positive assertions on the matter. And the louder people go on babbling about it, the harder I shrug my shoulders. But it's really only when you get to thinking about death in the first person that it gets so confusing. Because somebody else is dying. It can be hard to swallow emotionally, but conceptually it's simple. I mean, I'm quite familiar with watching things pop in and out. And that's the most brutal reminder of the gap between me and them. I can watch things die, cease, but no one thing can experience its own non-existence. Everybody else is tempered in oneself, but oneself unto oneself is not. So I guess it's the same thing that makes people so upset when they finish a story. An unkind reminder that their own world is irreconcilably distinct from their fictional one they have lately attempted to occupy. That's why the teller has to wrap things up so carefully, play just the right sleight of hand, give the impression that it all continues off page, right of screen, without having to stay in the chair talking way into eternity. Otherwise, everyone's unhappy, as each drops gradually back into their own little solipsistic pocket. But I found a way out, I told you, of the pocket. That whole thing about the riddle, remember? Afraid I can't explain it much further, lest I mistakenly put a proper cap on the whole thing. All I'll say is this. It's not over. And if you don't believe me, just look at it through the character's perspective. Sure, we cut away, but those three continue on, the riddle lingering. Because just like no person is ever aware of being dead, no character is ever cognizant of the story being over. How about that?
How about indeed?
Huh?
Oh, are we really gonna have to do this whole bit again?
Surely you recognized us that first time too. Unless, well, was that really you back in there? Or no?
Though I'm not sure this is the place to be discussing the metaphysics of the self-insert.
Hell, I'm not even sure that this is a place at all.
As it is, setting, no. It appears our author hadn't thought this far.
No. No, I hadn't. How? How are you here?
I think that would be your job to know, wouldn't it?
But alas, our author is either evidently deficient in that regard or plain coy.
I think I'll take coy for 2,000. This fucker knows exactly what's up. Come on, pal, drop the act. Even we know how we got here.
But our author is contractually obligated to deny such knowledge. We heard the spiel, did we not? As soon as the answer to the riddle is given, it's over.
Are you going to make us drag the whole thing out word by word?
What? What do you even want to hear? Why do you even want to hear it?
Your first question quite literally begs the question. We know what we want to hear, but it has to be from your mouth. Otherwise, there's no point. And as for why,
It's for your own sake, blockhead. I mean, we want out of here, sure, but we want to get you out as well. If you leave this so-called riddle dangling in the air, then it's purgatory for all of us.
So let's just start with this. Why won't you answer the riddle?
What can you do if I refuse to reply?
well, I imagine you understand full well that the whole scheme would come crashing down around your head in that case. Are we three not independent beings? Do we not have wishes of our own? Would you be anything other than a cosmic tyrant to run right over them and shackle us for eternity as your existential thralls?
Okay, fine. Here. I won't answer the riddle because that's what keeps the story hanging. And even if I know the answer, as long as somebody doesn't, then it all floats on. Somewhere, right?
Don't look at us, pal. Go ask a mirror for assurance and be more direct.
Regardless, it's a good start. Now, why do you need the story to persist like that?
To keep the characters alive. Or not alive exactly, but there.
And which characters would those be?
You three.
Naturally. And why don't you tell us, good barkeep, good author, good self-proclaimed god in chains, who exactly are we three?
That's hard to explain.
We know, but that's the thing. We already know, so misunderstanding isn't an issue. Just say it as best as you can.
Fine. You're me. Pieces of me. 3 parts of a whole. Broken off, packaged, and shipped somewhere outside my head.
Precisely. Would you care to elaborate upon why you elected to split your psyche into this colorful triad called we?
To have another.
Just a little further. Another what?
Nothing, okay? Not another anything. Just an other. Full stop. My ticket out of the pocket. I figured if I can't get outside me, then, well, I have inside me, don't I? And if I break that to pieces, well, then it's all the same, isn't it? Whether it's larger integers or smaller fractions, I've still killed unity. I've still gotten past 1. So, are you content with that? I've said it all, okay?
Ah, nice try, Chief. You still haven't said the answer aloud. Out with it then.
Oh, come on. Isn't it painfully obvious now?
It's not about what's known or obvious or clearly communicated. It's about what you'll admit in full voice. We mean to turn your eyes on what you refuse to look at otherwise. We remember it too, you know, how it felt, how it feels.
Fine. Pose the question.
3 friends walk into a bar on New Year's Eve. 1 in red, a 2nd in blue, and the 3rd in green. Who makes it out at the dawn of the next year?
I do. I'm the one, okay? The wretch behind the counter, the fucking barkeep, the last one standing, the only one who was ever standing to begin with, goddammit. Okay? I said it. There's your fucking answer. It's over. You can go. Be free, my children, and all that bullshit.
We aren't done yet. What would we be to just leave you hanging there like that?
Even I don't much like the thought of you drowning in a pool of your own babbling tears.
And I imagine you might believe yourself to have an ace in the hole yet, as it were.
Oh, yeah? What would that be?
Faust, naturally.
I explained the whole damn thing, didn't I?
Yes, but not quite honestly. Could you tell us what really happened when you drank Foss?
I told you already. It's not easy to parse out. Do I have to quote myself again?
Oh, that? Come the fuck off it, buddy. You couldn't fool so much as a toddler with that flimsy, I got me a liquid sense of purpose crap.
I'm afraid that even from within the confinement we were subject to at the time, I was able to see the transparent sophistry of your explanation. Please, a truer account. What happened when you drank Foss?
Nothing. That's what. Nil. Jack shit. Fuck all. Zippo.
While we're at it, I'm sure old man Foss would appreciate it if you cleared his name for the concoction of your cherished poison.
Yeah, all right, fine, whatever. I brewed it. I just wanted to quiet things down, okay? It's always just too much me everywhere. Me hiding behind every little thing. So I figured if I could just shut down the me engine, the will or conscious thought or whatever the hell. You know?
But nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, isn't it just definitionally impossible? How can I not be stuck inside me? I am, and when the world lives on after I'm gone, or rather when I'm still here after the whole world around me has passed into nothing, what kind of shitty little pocket universe will I be stuck in then?
Afraid of dying? How deliciously original.
Well, it's not just that, or it's not even that specifically, because even now, well, all the stuff outside me just seems like it has to be just so much illusion. But in that case, if it's all just me, then how do I even have a fractional concept of other by which I could be deceived? The not me, seeming patently inconceivable. But if I had no concept, there would be no problem. Why is it all puck? It doesn't make the least sense. How do you answer a question that you can't even fucking phrase?
Oh, indeed.
But I think you're getting close.
Come on, Chief. If you hear yourself spewing nothing but gibberish, what do you do?
I don't fucking know. Scream, cry, beat my head against the wall until my skull cracks and the brains pour out over the pavement? What the fuck ought I do, huh?
As troubling as your suggestions are, they aren't entirely off mark in spirit.
Good barkeep. If you seem to yourself to speak gibberish, then pray tell, what is the first and most fundamental of all communication skills? What is the most basic piece of wisdom that one must possess if one is to make sense to oneself and others?
What? What is it? Why don't you tell me, good sage?
It is knowing when not to speak.
So do yourself in the world a favor and just shut the fuck up when it's time for it, okay?
So just give up? That's it? Stop trying to answer the question? Just stop thinking? I already tried that. That was Foss. That was a whole fucking deal.
No, not stop thinking, stop speaking.
The difference being?
Words.
You must have plenty of other avenues to try, whether forgotten or otherwise.
Huh. Good start.
I'm not pleased. This is not an answer.
No, it isn't.
It's just a first step.
Now, can you at least try to content yourself with that?
I don't fucking know. Well, is that it? No more? Are you quite done with me then?
I'm afraid the question is, are you done with us?
I assure you, we're past whatever usefulness we might once have had. We can be distinctly we, only insofar as the conscious effort to make that distinction is maintained. And, well, you served us the one thing that dulls that capacity.
You made it, you killed it. Fitting, huh? You behind every corner.
It's unfortunate, but there is time ahead for more attempts at a solution. Try to get creative. Now, may we consider ourselves free to depart?
Yes.
Thank you.
Not so much for our existence as for releasing us from it.
Now, in return, allow us to leave you this question. What shall be your pain without the words to voice it?
Shit. Those three were right, you know. I suppose I just need to give it a rest. The old pipes are weary. I need a lozenge. It's not giving up. It's just changing tracks and, well, it's not anything I can really share here. Sorry. I must sound pretty nutty. Talking to a mirror through a prism, hung up on a question I can't even put into proper words, but I'm sure you can understand the gist of it. Somewhere in there, I mean, well, don't you ever just get sick of hearing your own voice?